writers, agents, and publishers, for the first time since the Gutenberg Press, find themselves lost in a maze of mystery as technology alters the shape of the publishing industry. Searching for Answers is a group of writers throwing pop culture, writing, and publishing into a crucible of clarity, passion, and humor. This group is the Right Pack. Welcome back to Right Pack Radio. This is your host, David Allen Lucas, author of Crazy Things and producer at Winding Trails Media. And with me today is...
Fedora Amos. I write Victorian whodunits like Jack the Ripper in St. Louis, and just out from 5-Star Cengage, Mayhem at Buffalo Bill's Wild West. You can find me if you happen to be in Sedalia, Missouri, which is where the story is set, on June the 4th at Reader's World. And before that, May 21st in St. Charles at Main Street Books, 1 to 3 in the afternoon.
I'm Melanie Claney, author of science fiction, fantasy, and nonfiction, and currently I am beta reading. Oh, and I'm supposed to be talking louder, so let's see how I do.
Practice.
Okay.
My name is Jennifer Stolzer. I've got a bit of a cold, so I apologize if I sound a little phlegmy. But I'm going to talk anyway, so you'll have to deal with it. It's probably too late to announce this, but if you just happen to be at OzCon on the 30th of April, I might have seen you there, and if I saw you there, hello again, because I'm going there to talk.
And hopefully you picked up some Right Pack Radio information.
There will be some there. Also, I have a booth there, or had a booth there, since we're projecting into the future.
Yes, we have entered in the TARDIS. Okay.
Lee Savage, author of Erotic Romance, and under the pen name Carrie Lee Williams, children's books.
Okay, and today we're going to do two things we're going to talk about. Is first off, today is, or this month of May, where this is airing, is the birthday of the author of Peter Pan, J.M. Barrie. I knew I was going to screw that up.
May 9th, his birthday. May 9th.
And the other part is going to talk about setting your imagination free. Well, first off, I guess let's talk about J.M. I mean, second
Very
star to the
interesting
right,
character.
second star to the right, straight on till morning.
Well, Barrie created something that certainly has lasted. You know, he was born in, at what for us would have been 1860, just as the Civil War was getting about ready to start. And across the world, a lot of interesting things were happening. Not quite so interesting as here, but he helped to change that in a way, because he did something which captures the spirit of youth, the spirit of children throughout the ages, and he's still just as popular today as he ever has been. I mean, think about some of the new things that have come along very recently, like Ridley Pearson. Have you seen Peter and the Starcatcher or read his book?
Not
Peter
yet.
and the
I'm
Starcatcher?
sorry, Ridley. I hate to admit that. Not yet. But yeah, exactly. He's right. It's based on Peter Pan.
Absolutely.
He wrote it based on Peter Pan and then got the interest of Disney. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, exactly. And it is a play. I've seen it as a play. It's a kind of musical, though not exactly. And it sort of goes, I don't know where it goes exactly. The second act takes you into the jungles where they meet some other interesting people. So it's not the story of Peter Pan per se, it's the story of Peter Pan with a certain permutation that goes somewhere else.
It's the expanded universe of Peter Pan.
Exactly,
Yes.
the expanded universe of Pan, I like that.
And there's been hasn't there been a new film adaptation?
We don't speak of that film.
Which
I haven't
one?
seen it
What-
yet.
Pan
Is that okay? I
Pan,
have not
Pan
seen
was
it.
Pan was panned
That was Pan.
by both viewers and critics. It was supposed to start a brand new franchise, a panchise, if you would.
I love them. Punchise.
Subsequent Pan films have also been panned because it didn't make back the money it cost to make the movie.
Well, that's all about money. Did you see it?
I did not see it, but I am I'm a bit addicted to listening to movie reviews, and it was ranked often on a lot of people's worst movies of last year's list. So I imagine that it's probably not really well done, but it was inspired by Peter Pan. It was not actually a retelling of Peter Pan.
Do we know why it was so bad?
Kind of thing. Well, they did a lot of casting of white people as Indians, which probably wasn't popular.
Didn't they learn from that recent Egyptian film not to do that?
They did not.
I think they probably had cast that movie before the Egyptian film was out.
I know.
But it was, I think it was, not having seen it myself or being able to draw a conclusion, I would be happy to give you a full rundown of it if I'd known it. But from what I understand, it had a lot to do with it being a high-action, set-piece CGI fanfare fest, and not so much a coherently written plot character adventure. So there wasn't a lot to connect yourself to. It was mostly lights and sounds for 2.5 hours, and that wears people out.
Special effects.
Yeah, it doesn't really adhere you to a franchise-type thing. When you go in to see like Jupiter Ascending, and Jupiter Ascending is a hot mess, but it's a beautiful hot mess. You sit there and you watch it for 2 hours and you say, wow, that was a hot mess. I enjoyed that. But you don't say, I can't wait for the next one, which is what you anticipate when you're trying to build a franchise.
Right.
They also have the TV show, I forget, where they redid all the story tells, kind of interlinking.
Once Upon a Time.
Yeah, Once Upon a Time. And Peter Pan is not such a good guy in that. And Captain Hook is not so bad in that. So you see a change in the characters and adaptation, but it's all based on the original fairy tales.
Well, while we're talking about spin-offs, and we're talking about Disney, because Once Upon a Time is a Disney vehicle belonging to ABC, it was that the Pirates of Peter Pan have actually got their own spin-off TV show.
Ooh, I didn't
It's a
know
cartoon
that.
show for young boys. About, I think it's Jake and the Pirates. I might
yeah,
have that wrong.
I've seen that.
Yeah, but it actually is about like Captain Hook and the actual pirates of Peter Pan. Only your lead character is also a pirate. He's just a pirate that doesn't steal things, so he's a very bad pirate.
I'm gonna admit my favorite spin-off of Peter Pan is still Hook.
Hook is great.
Give me Robin Williams.
I always wanted to be in that
That's all.
food fight when I was little.
Oh
Yeah.
yes.
I kind of like the version with, I can't think of his name right at the moment, when he played Hook. Who played Hook?
Huh.
Dustin Hoffman.
Dustin Hoffman.
That's the same
Exactly.
movie,
It's the same one. Okay.
Well,
I didn't realize it was actually the same movie, but yes, it was fun.
since we're talking about the author, though, who here saw Finding Neverland, which is actually about the writing of Peter Pan?
I hate to say
saw
it,
that movie.
I panned it.
You panned it?
Yeah.
Does that mean you didn't see it or that you didn't like it?
I didn't see it.
That was Kate Winslet and Johnny Depp, right?
Yes, it was.
Okay. And it was presumably the story of
And I think the little kid
how
from
Barrie
Hugo.
wrote it. Yeah.
Well, okay, for what I know about Barrie, he had an older brother that died, and his mother took it very badly.
Oh.
And she said, apparently, well, at least he'll never have to grow up.
Oh.
And the author never grew up. He never got above 5 feet. He was less than 5 feet tall.
Oh.
He went into puberty very late. Some of his later writings are rather, let's just say they're not at all like Peter Pan.
Uh-huh.
But Peter Pan is sort of like this ideal world where he can imagine his brother went to.
That's kind of sad. I didn't
Very
know that
sad.
story before.
Yeah.
But he's actually in psychology textbooks as a textbook case of what happens when you overstress a child and
yeah.
childhood the effects of childhood trauma.
To stunt growth and stunt.
Well,
and
he was under so much stress for so long. This is the prolonged effects, and most of the time you only see that in kids with orphanages.
So
Well,
with
he
that,
was the ninth of 10 children.
Yeah.
So that might have something to do with the whole business.
Yeah.
okay, with that, and we know that his imagination clearly went wild, especially with Peter Pan. Let's talk about unleashing our imaginations.
And before we get to that,
Okay, go for it.
yeah, I would like to say that J.M. Barrie is certainly his lasting fame is with Peter Pan, but he wrote some other darn good plays. He wrote The Admirable Crichton, which is a wonderful play and very socially important throughout the years because it shows an aristocratic family and they get marooned like the family Robinson. And the aristocratic family is perfectly worthless. It is the butler who takes over.
I love it already.
Yes, and saves the family and becomes the king of the island, and everybody else works for him. So it was a role reversal that endeared him to a lot of people who went to the movies. Maybe not the king and queen, with the aristocratic
I haven't heard
families.
of this before. This sounds
I
right up
don't
my
know.
alley.
It's the
Yeah.
Admirable Crichton, and you might well want to read that sometime, or it has been made into a couple of movies,
I'm going to make a note.
and is really quite delightful. But the Peter Pan legend is perhaps never going to die. I noticed that on the same weekend that I'm going to Malice Domestic, and you're going to be talking at, what was it called?
OzCon.
OzCon.
In the Lake of the Ozarks, which
In
is
the
why
Lake
it's
of the
Oz.
Ozarks.
It has nothing to
Okay.
do with the Wizard of Oz. It's Ozark Con, so it's OzCon.
So you're not taking
Okay.
the old brick road, but you're really taking the red brick
I'm
road.
sorry,
I'm
when you said OzCon, I was thinking of like Ozfest.
It doesn't have anything to do with Ozzy Osbourne either.
But Missouri is bordering Kansas, so
Sort of, not the Ozarks themselves. It's more
True.
of the Arkansas that it's bordering.
Well, that very same weekend is going to be at Wildwood's St. Louis Community College campus, a show that they call Peter and Wendy, a lyrical, atmospheric interpretation of Peter Pan. So this Peter Pan legend is just not going to quit. It keeps right on going. What do you think is the secret of it?
I think that's
Why does that keep on appealing to people for hundreds of years, literally?
None of us ever want to grow up
Yeah,
anyway.
growing up sucks.
That's it.
Um,
That eternal childish part of us keeps on living in Peter Pan.
well, you want to have adventures.
And we want, well, that's the childish thing. We want to have adventure.
I mean, as an adult, the closest you really get to some adventures is drive into work during rush hour and you not get hit. And actually, sometimes I feel like doing the Hunger Games at that point, going, may the odds be always in your favor.
One thing you might not know about Peter Pan is that it too is a spin-off in a way. It is a spin-off of the Captain Ahab, Moby Dick.
Oh, how is
Think
that?
about that. Think about Hook and how much he is like Captain Ahab.
Okay,
And
yeah.
Barrie himself said that was his inspiration for Hook,
Interesting.
because they're both somewhat deranged and stunned by being
And they've got an animal adversary,
Yes,
a nemesis that happens to be a creature that has eaten parts of their body.
and they're
Yes.
quite obsessive about it.
Yes, they're very obsessive compulsive when it comes to that.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. So I just thought that was interesting, because maybe there are not so many very new stories. They're just kind of spin-offs, one after
Yes,
another.
of
Well,
through
there's
the
only a
years.
couple of stories that are to be told, and they continually be told in different ways or whatever.
Of
Yeah.
course.
I'll
Perfect.
share something off mic on that. Go
Well, I wanted to share a bit of an anecdote from my childhood to prove that it's not just adults that look wistfully on Peter Pan. My younger sister, I wish she could have been here today, but she's doing homework to be a veterinary technician at the moment. My younger sister was so obsessed with Peter Pan when we were little, and I'm talking about like preschool age. We had a VHS copy of Mary Martin's Peter Pan, and Mother told her she could only watch it once a day. For the love of God, once a day. Because before that rule was on there, she would rewind it and press play, and rewind it and press play, and it was going constantly, all day, all the time, and Mom's like, once a day! You get your one time, and that's it, because she could not take it any longer. It held such a magnetic hold over my younger sister, and knowing my younger sister now as she's grown up, I think it was that element where you could be a child but also be this independent, in charge of yourself, getting into trouble, getting yourself out of trouble. She loved the Indians and the people dressed in the animal costumes. It was the fantasy world where you lived in a tree house and you made friends with pirates and Indians, and you could fly.
And Tinkerbell.
And Tinkerbell. In the Mary Martin Tinkerbell, the Mary Martin thing, Tinkerbell is just a flashing light that floats around.
Yeah.
I prefer her that way personally, but we won't get into my my general exhaustion of Tinkerbell right now.
And of course, it keeps being revived over and over again on the stage with Kathy Rigby, for example, for years with Peter Pan. I don't know how many years that lovely Olympic winner kept being Peter Pan.
I'm going to shift us back to the other part of our topic, which is unleashing your imagination. And normally I would quote, we normally quote from the author we're talking about, but today I'm not going to do that with this first one anyway. I found a quote by Lauren Bacall that I think really fits the Peter Pan mode still with the imagination. Imagination is the highest kite that you can fly.
Yeah.
So, what are some ways that you unleash your imagination? I mean, we're all writers here. Most of our listeners are writers, but I know we're not all just writers. We all have other arts we do as well. Is there anything with that? Or
Well, I can only speak for what I do and what inspires me, and it's reading old advertisements from 1898 newspapers and finding out that a shoe that was supposed to be really good winter footwear cost $1.39. And that they had advertisements for things that would cure absolutely everything from an ingrown toenail to cancer. All you had to do was to take this elixir.
I had a question about that. Did the word cancer actually appear in the ad? Wow, because later, I think it was in the 50s, they didn't allow the C word in the newspaper.
Okay.
Well,
it was not until 1906 that there was any law against putting odd things like strychnine, and some of them had strychnine in them, into these mixtures, or making any claim whatsoever for them. You could claim whatever you wanted to.
Yes, that I actually knew.
So there were no regulations on it at all.
So, inspiration, what inspires the imagination in people. I'm very inspired by taking in other media, reading other people's books, watching other people's movies. Specifically, character. If we have longtime listeners to this show, they might be able to name a couple of my obsessives. These people that I have so completely fallen in love with that I feel like they're real life people, but Londo might have been one of them, yeah, perhaps. But I take a lot of inspiration from that, from being able to take apart a character and think about what makes them work. And that makes me want to apply stories to those people, which then makes me want to apply stories to my own people. I have my own characters that are directly inspired from a couple of my favorites in media. It's been noted before, but my ghost story has a butler character in it, which is one reason why I got so excited about the story about the butler taking over the Swiss Family Robinson. But that butler character is very much inspired by Alfred from Batman. Not because he has anything about him other than his appearance that looks like Alfred, but I've just always been sort of inspired, like really captured by the idea that someone who does not belong to this family would then give their entire lives to the family and become as close to the children, specifically in the case of my book and the Batman story, so close to the children of that family that they become the new parent when the other gets lost. And that's kind of the inspiration of my entire ghost story, is I wanted to tell the story of a young girl who finds a new father in an unlikely place. So we had the conversation in an earlier episode about fan art and fan fiction and whether or not those things are valid. I consider them valid because I find strength and ideas in them that can then be translated into personal things that I can then perhaps publish or sell.
Like Jen, I find inspiration in other people's books, movies, TV shows. Also looking at artwork. Sometimes a particular piece of artwork might think, ooh, that would make a good character. What can I do with that? Or this certain trait. Even looking at photography sometimes, like just photography, I'll see this picture and like the fantasy art and ooh, that would make a good story if you twist that. As well as I've gotten a few ideas from dreams. So
do you get any from book covers that you See?
Not usually ideas from books covers that I see, but I will take images and make them into what I would like to say character profile pictures, like kind of like my idea of what my character would look like, and then use that. I used to sketch out what I thought my characters would look like.
That's what I do, yeah.
But now I try to find actual pictures because then that can later help for making the book covers, but use that tool for.
Myself, there's one which I have not been able to do, but sometimes what I do is center myself. My other main art is martial arts. So I will literally do kata or freestyle, meaning just opening it up and practicing what is a kata.
Well, what is a kata? But also I was going to ask, do you come up with kata or pick kata for your characters when you're trying to get in their minds?
Yes, I have done that. It's not a constant thing, but if I've got a character that is either a martial artist or something that really is close, yeah, I will. I'll think about which one if they're more power or if they're more grace.
Then now define a kata for people who don't know what it is.
Okay, kata is a combination of techniques. I'm going to give you the boring version, and I'll give you a short one after. Combination of techniques in which is against an imaginary opponent or group of opponents that focuses your attention and focuses your ability to do the said techniques. Okay, please wake up now. I usually compare katas to for non-martial artists is a kata is to martial arts what the floor exercise is to gymnastics. It is usually a very choreographed form throughout martial arts. Every style has different katas. Sometimes they're all named the same. My main style has tiger. Well, I can guarantee you I can go to 8 different styles and they're going to have some form of tiger. It's not going to look like mine, but it's going to be there. And actually all martial arts, regardless of where they came from and so forth, any judge may not be able to know any styles, in particular kata. We know the stances, we know the hand strikes, we're able to review it that way. Another thing which I do is I'll get inspiration from life, and then I'm going to give you my true inspiration. For example, if you don't like spiders, I'm sorry ahead of time, but yesterday...
Trigger warning.
This happened to me yesterday, and I'm trying to figure out how to work it into a murder mystery. I took my mail out of my mailbox, and I'm flipping through my bills and all that, and it's only in between 2 of them was a spider. Like, yeah, kill! But it's like, okay, now wait a minute. And as soon as I got done killing the spider, I got thinking, yes, I kill spiders. It's my gut reaction.
Plant a poisonous spider and
plant a poisonous spider to kill somebody, and why would they do that, and what kind of spider would it have to be? Because the black widows in Missouri are not powerful enough to kill with just one bite. So, I started playing.
Neither are the brown recluses.
No, they aren't either.
But they will make you have a bad time.
Oh, yeah.
And they could kill you because they get festered in
theory they could, but unless you could stop the person from going to medical treatment, it will be very unlikely unless they're allergic.
Right.
Well, even if they do, I know of a man who actually had that and had to have some flesh cut away.
Yes, but he's alive.
Yes, he's alive.
Right.
How inspiring.
And to follow that up, and that's absolutely nothing. I have a rule at my bill pay job, and that is I will not listen to orchestra or symphonic or movie style music at work. And one time I had a vice president who never understood why I didn't do this until I walked into her office to report to something. And she was on the phone. She had signaled me to come in, and she closed it. She got off the phone. She had classical music playing in the background. I forget what the piece was, but I rattled it off exactly. Composed her that. She goes, wait a minute, I'm always passing you, and I'm always hearing jazz or something else. Well, how do you know this? It's like, because I write to this. This is my inspiration, is when I hear this music, I can picture stories immediately. She looked at me like she didn't understand. I said, okay, turn it up a little bit and give me 1 second. She turned it up, and I just literally took a breath, had no thought of what a story would be, and started rattling off a description of the story starting off. She's like, oh. It's like, yeah, I don't distract myself from the other job. So music is another one. And as a sidebar, I will show off after this to off mic. I am getting back to playing an instrument after 10 years being away from it. So that, which I'm going to enjoy, and that hopefully will be an inspiration.
What is it?
It is a bowed psaltery. A bowed psaltery, actually I'll show it to you guys here. I know you can't see it on there.
Maybe you can post a picture on the website.
Actually, as I
Good
say,
idea.
you can Google it. A psaltery, overall, its concept has been around really since ancient Greece, ancient Israel. In fact, if you, I don't care if you're faith, but if you look at what's called the Book of Psalms by Christians, if you look closely, it will tell you what instruments are to be played for each psalm, and you'll see the word psaltery commonly listed. So it's a very old instrument. It now looks like a teardrop. If you ever watch Babylon 5, they use the psaltery in various different ways as background. It's one of those instruments you've seen, but you've never heard, or very few people ever hear.
It sounds quite a bit like a violin, but not exactly.
Yeah, I call it the grandfather of the violin. With that, go for it.
Another thing that I like, since I write historical mystery, is actual photographs of the marquee characters that I use. Like Annie Oakley, for example, Bill Cody, Dr. Crippen is the one that I'm currently working on. And when you look at these people, you can see them doing things, or at least I can. And that helps me a lot to see the actual photographs of people who once lived and were in the time period that I write.
I've mentioned, we're still kind of going around the circle talking about what inspires us.
Right, or how we do this.
I've mentioned in previous episodes about one of my sort of focusing exercises. When I was working on my fantasy novel, I would go to Caldi's to separate myself from all the other stuff I had to do. Because when you're at home, you have to do your bill pay job, you have to do your chores, you have to look after all your pets. Go to a coffee shop, suddenly it's like everyone else is doing stuff, but they're none of my business. I'll just sit here with my headphones on. But I would center myself when I was writing my fantasy book by drawing a very quick sketch of whatever scene I was getting ready to write, or the characters that featured in the scene I was getting ready to write, to get back into the idea of it. So sometimes pulling in another skill you have, like martial arts or music or drawing, since I'm an artist, letting that sort of change the way you think real quick so that you can write more efficiently. Especially since I don't have a time and a place, writing schedule, a rigid writing schedule a lot of people have where they meet the muse in their study every day. I meet the muse whenever I have a minute to meet the muse, and he better show up.
That's right. Drag him out of the closet and make him get to work.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Go for it.
Something else that, if all else fails, and I've got to say that I don't really have this problem, but I know that some people like writing prompts, and that writing teachers often teach writing prompts.
Yeah, if Kathleen was here,
to
she'd be
get
talking
them.
about how much she loves prompts.
Yeah, she loves
really
writing
does.
prompts. And a place where you might look for that, to have some kind of interesting ones, is seventhsanctum.com. And it will have things like, take a favorite character of yours that you are working on and flip the sex. Make him a different sex. And this could actually be workable. You might discover that that character should be the other sex, or no sex at all or if that doesn't work, try a different species. Make that character a dog or something else that will get you off of dead center and perhaps cause you to go somewhere in the stratosphere that will work for you. So writing prompts is a way that a lot of people get some inspiration and set their imaginations free.
I was reading The Afterword by an author, and this was the sequel. And in general, her writing idea was if she had established characters, okay, here's the established characters, what's the worst thing possible that could happen to them? Okay, that happens. Go from there.
That's a good prompt, or any what if prompt is good. What if we set this entire book under the Atlantic Ocean, or someplace very different from where it is?
What if your villains were the heroes and vice versa?
Yeah.
Now that's super common nowadays. We talked about that earlier. Captain Hook being not such a bad guy.
Yeah. At this point, Peter Pan is, I'm not going to say stale, but we've all heard the vanilla story of Peter Pan, or at least the Disneyfied version of it.
Sure.
And so looking for ways to explore these characters in different ways, other people are giving themselves story prompts about the Peter Pan universe in order to put them in. What if they were in a jungle? What if they were in a yarn kingdom? What if they were in a huge blockbuster film that would hopefully make $1 million? You know, that kind of thing.
I think a blockbuster film better make more than $1 million.
It didn't, I don't think.
I'm gonna take our question, and now I'm gonna turn it on its ear. What has anything ever stopped you from being creative? Be it life, be it somebody in your life, or something said to you, and if so, what have you done to get past it?
I'm sure everyone has an example of when they hit some sort of block, but you know, being busy, doing work, being exhausted. What's really kind of what killed my writing for a while was just lack of input. Like I'm a bit extroverted. It's more extroverted than most writers. When I didn't have a chance to share my work with someone, I had exhausted all of the beta readers I knew. Everyone that I knew from college who would have a passing interest at my novel had read it already, or read a good portion of it, and I felt bad asking them to read a good portion of it again, because I'd written more. And it became very disheartening, because I was in a vacuum suddenly, and I gave it to a family member, and I said, "Here, would you like to read my novel? I have it all printed out," and they gave it back to me and said, "Good for you, but this isn't the kind of thing I'm into," and that made me so sad. And that was one thing that kept me from writing, is because I was getting, as an extroverted person who likes to draw their energy from from interacting with other people, to not have anyone to interact with was something that caused my writing to take a bit of a pause. The way to solve that problem was I found another beta reader and I gave it to them, and they wrote back and were actually interested in my characters and understood the themes I was putting in, and suddenly I was on fire not only to finish my novel but to write the next one.
All right.
So,
Speaking of your novel, how is that journey into self-publishing going?
it's going pretty good. I rewrote the first chapter earlier this week.
Oh,
It's a bit of I think the new one is better in many, many ways, but mostly, which is just a statement real quick for all of the viewing audience. I had to rewrite the first chapter in self-publishing because I had overworked my first chapter, trying desperately to get it to be what agents wanted to see. And it was no longer itself. So I forked it out and I rewrote it from scratch, and I think it's a lot better now because it feels more true to the story, and it's not so much, oh, but if I'm writing a YA, it has to be like this. Oh, but if I'm writing a fantasy, it has to be like this. Which is one reason why I probably didn't get picked up by a lot of agents, because the voice was off. So, there you go. Be true to your book, and yes, listen to what people tell you that agents want to hear, but don't have that be at the cost of your inspiration.
Or your voice.
Or your voice, or your characters.
And don't forget, Frank Herbert took 6 years to write Dune. And trust me, I've actually listened to the audiobook version of his first draft, or first version. I am so glad that's not the one that we all know and love.
Mm-hmm, you gotta edit it.
Oh, it big changes. And before I turn this over to Lee real fast, something you said, Jennifer, that I wanted to hit on. If you've studied Myers-Briggs personality, you know about introverts versus extroverts, and of course there's a lot more to it than just that. But drawing your energy, you're a classic extrovert. You draw your energy from the outside. So I'm going to ask everybody, as you talk about how you overcome this, where do you draw your energy from as well? So just something to add to our question.
I can draw my energy either way. I prefer get input once I get so far along. But I did it on my own for a long time. After my dad passed, I didn't have anyone else. I didn't know about writers groups, so I had to learn on my own. My husband doesn't really particularly care to read erotica. He'll let me, read a scene or a little bit to him. He doesn't really give good feedback other than that sounded okay.
When are we going to do that?
Yeah, but not the type of feedback you really need. So I can go either way. I do prefer to have outside input. Now, what keeps getting in my way, life does get in my way, and that's with everyone, and we struggle, and I'll have to put it on the side again as I go into nursing school, but I know I'm going to come back to it. My big pause button that I had is I grew up with my father who wrote, And I constantly saw him trying to make it. At the time, there was no self-published like we know. There was vanity presses. That was it. And so I constantly saw him get the rejections. And he was bipolar and borderline. So every time he would get that rejection letter, he would go into deep depression. And then he would come back out, and then I would grow up seeing this swing back and forth and back and forth. And in the beginning, I was writing, and in high school, I started writing, and I was getting a little somewhere. And then eventually, I was like, I really do not want to put myself through this yo-yo of this back and forth. So I tried to stop completely. I just gave up writing. I completely gave it up until about a little bit before I got pregnant. It was like I was working as a waitress and also working as at weekends only as a furniture seller, both jobs, and I started writing Angel of Death. And I was writing like chapters on napkins and stuff during my work shift and putting it together, and it just like I could no longer hold it back. It was like it had to come out again. And luckily at that time the self-publishing started to come back in, where you had like print on demand. And I had to learn on my own, everything to do about it. And eventually, thank goodness, I learned about St. Louis Writers Guild, which then gave me the people to get involved with, to make connections and go to some other writing groups and events. And you make good connections with people, and you try to stay in touch with them. And it all helps try to get you along. And even though I know I have to put writing on the side again later, I know those people are going to be like, hey, now that you're done with this nursing school, it's time to get back on it.
Oh, you're on spring break. Let's start writing. Come on.
Yeah.
You got a week. You got a day.
You know where to find us.
Yes.
Well, a couple of things I could say, I suppose. One is I don't believe in writer's block. That's not. However, it does take a certain degree of peace of mind in order to write, which is why I do it first thing in the morning, and because then it's a peaceful time. Nobody expects anything from me because it's black outside. I don't expect myself to go rushing out to do some exercise, or I don't eat, I don't drink coffee, I don't do anything. I just write for a while. And it's because I need a degree of solitude, a degree of peace of mind in order to write. So that is one of the things. And the other I'll think of in a minute.
I prefer that dark peace of mind time on the front end of sleeping as opposed to the back end of sleeping. I am not a morning person, but I'll stay up all night. So,
actually, creativity. This goes perfectly into that. The back end of sleeping. My internal editor turns off when I get tired enough. So writing at 2 a.m, assuming I can still spell and type, it can be a very creative time because I don't care if it's perfect anymore.
I actually prefer nighttime writing too.
And the other thing was that I deliberately choose not to write on some occasions. One, when my day is going to be just so busy that it's foolish to even think about it, because I've got too much other stuff to think about. And also that I want to live in the moment on many occasions. When I go on vacation, when I go to Europe, I'm not going to write. I'm going to love Europe, or love not loving Europe. But I'm going to be there every second that I'm spending $1,000 a day to be there for.
And that brings up an interesting point with all these authors now putting out books so quickly. I think they forget to live, and I think they forget their family because they're trying to keep up with having to put out 6 books a year, 10 books a year,
Which,
whatever.
by the way, is how they make a living at it, because each book doesn't make that much.
True, but at the same time, at what price? If you totally give up your life to it and you don't find that balance, at what price did you do this? Because what are the chances of eventually getting to where you don't have to output that much again, so you can actually live a life again?
Unfortunately, the price is usually food, medicine, mortgage, and gas.
Yeah.
So,
and some resort to chicanery, to plagiarism, or like the Janet, whatever her name was.
Yeah, there was recently a huge case of that.
What was that? I hadn't heard of it.
What was her name? It was Janet something or other. But she completely plagiarized an entire romance novel.
More than one, if it's the one I'm thinking of.
Okay,
Yeah,
do you
she
remember
took multiple. No, I don't remember. But there is, if you go to her page on Amazon, It actually says that she has been removed for plagiarizing. Like in the comments, even though there's still some books listed, there's a whole bunch of books that Amazon has removed, and I think they're getting ready to remove more. She took other people's books and just changed some of the characters' names or something, maybe changed the setting slightly, and boom,
And it was
put
like
out.
whole paragraphs just lifted.
Yeah.
So she took the
Wholesale.
playbook of China. That's
Yeah.
what China's been doing lately. The nation. I'll say, you talked about Price. And I don't know, I just remember this.
Janet
in-
Daly
Janet Daly, that's
Janet
right.
Daly, okay.
Sounds like it.
admitted to plagiarizing from Nora Roberts.
Wow.
If you're gonna plagiarize, choose a less well-known author.
But she was on hand.
She was easy. Okay. But what I was gonna say is, I don't know what's happened with this cartoonist since then, and I can't think of his name. I'm sorry, but the
I've
guy
got
who wrote
Google
Calvin and
running.
Hobbes,
Oh.
he had actually stopped writing it because he had burned himself out. That was at a cost of him constantly having to meet this output that was required of him, not to make it.
Calvin and Hobbes is Bill Watterson.
Thank you. I couldn't think of his name. I don't know if he's gone back to cartooning or not.
I
but-
thought he had gone back to it, and he made it's no longer Calvin and Hobbes. Calvin's all grown up, and it's Calvin's daughter.
Right. I didn't know if that's
is that
how he
him or
ended
was that
the
someone
previous
else?
or not. Okay.
If it's not him, it's with his permission. I thought he did that, but I don't remember for sure.
I thought he started another script. But
We
I
might have
might
done
be wrong.
that too.
It is true.
Well, it's hard to quit something that is successful, and yet it's perhaps impossible to create a new strip every day.
Well, look at Arthur Conan Doyle. He was extremely popular with Sherlock Holmes. He got tired of Sherlock Holmes. He killed off Sherlock Holmes.
Multiple times.
Well, definitely one time I could think of, and tried to publish other stuff, which, yes, it got published. It wasn't as popular, and people were demanding more Sherlock Holmes. So, and of course, he had to bring the character back. What do you do with rejections? Either rejection letters, rejectable comments from readers, or from beta readers / family members. How do you overcome that? How do you let your imagination go and continue to grow when people throw roadblocks up in front of you?
Bill Watterson hasn't done anything since Calvin and Hobbes.
I'm
Okay.
Okay, with beta readers, I try to take what they say and figure out, okay, am I getting the same feedback from more than one beta reader? If so, then something needs to change, and I try to take that as advisement, with still staying true to my characters and my story.
Well-
However, overall,
This has come up before, but if a beta reader finds something, there's something wrong there, but what they say to fix it might not be right.
correct.
Neil Gaiman.
So
Yeah.
you take that into advisement. Now, however, if it's a bad review, I just ignore it.
Mm-hmm.
Don't ever respond to a bad review. Don't ask your friends to go respond to bad reviews.
No, don't do that.
Just ignore, and hopefully you'll get some good reviews later on. And remember, not all bad reviews are particularly on your, because I've had bad reviews because they don't read erotica. Then why did you buy the erotica book?
Uh-huh.
You know, come on. So of course you're not gonna like it if it's not your type, or if you don't like vampires. Okay, you're not gonna like the vampire book.
Yeah.
Or if you don't like vampires that actually feed on humans, you're not gonna like it.
Now,
So
that could be an issue. The only thing I take from that is truth in advertising.
yeah.
Should they have known better? Or were they fooled by something that was missing from like your description or something like that?
So
Yeah.
well, they shouldn't assume that all vampires don't bite humans. It's a
That's-
vampire.
Yeah.
the Dracula bit humans, so I mean, not all of us are Twilight vampires. So, just saying, if they're assuming it's that, then it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah, some of those you can't really get around.
Yeah, so you just gotta leave it alone. Just leave it alone and hope that better will come along. And you gotta remember there are trolls out there from other people's authors and sites that will go in and give bad reviews to anybody that they deem a threat. So you just got to remember, if someone's trolling you and putting the effort into putting those bad reviews, then you've done something right.
Yeah.
That's true.
Now, on the other hand, like for instance, if they don't like erotica, I would say that assuming they read the information you put forward by your book, you should know before you buy erotica.
Yeah, don't do that on accident and then complain about it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but there are people that will. I mean,
Well, if you ever read a comments under an article like in Yahoo, it's amazing how many people clearly didn't read the article before
some people don't
commenting.
even read the description of the book. They
Well,
just like, oh, I
obviously.
like that book cover. And they'll get it expecting that it's a traditional romance or something,
It's-
but, you know,
it's
there was
never
3
fair.
guys on the cover, so, I mean, come on.
It's never fair when you're being judged based on what the audience is assuming is going to happen, and it doesn't happen in the book, and then they judge you for it, or in a show, or in anything. And it's also not. It's important to note, as you've been saying, when your critique is an actual critique and when it's just complaining. I got a critique on some artwork recently. It was an interesting little thing because it was in a public forum, so lots of people got to see
Was that a
this.
certain Babylon 5?
Yes, it
poster?
was. Yes, it was.
I saw that post. I saw that
Someone
discussion.
popped on and basically just says, "I don't like this style of art." I'm like, "Thank you. Why did you tell me that?" Because it's the question. It was posed as a question: am I the only one who doesn't get this style of art? And that was that. Yeah, I could take that as a critique on my part. I could be like, "Oh my gosh, no one likes the way I draw. Oh darn!" But the more logical and the smarter way to do it is to realize that he chose the wrong place to air his complaint. He didn't like that style of art. Well, if he's going to tell me about it, obviously I do like that style of art because I drew the art.
It is your style.
So it's you have to. I was not upset by his comment because I was aware that he was choosing the wrong place in order to state an opinion that he is completely able to have. He's allowed to not like that style of art. I don't like the style of some other art. It's true that not all things are for me, so I can't expect all things to be for him. If he doesn't like it, then he's welcome to move on. But he felt the need to tell me about it, and I could have either gotten mad or offended, or I could have taken it for what it was, which was someone just stating their opinion and had 0 things to do with it.
I will say that is a perfect provocateur comment that I could see an actual artist under a pseudonym putting under their own thing, which you obviously didn't do,
I did
because
not do
that's
that,
a
no.
perfect opportunity for people to just come on and say, "I love this type of art."
Yeah,
There's
nothing
something
like
called
a.
puppets.
Yep.
We talked about in some earlier episode. I forget which one.
And those people who come in are called white knights. They're white knighting for people.
Mhm.
Jumping in to defend them from a perceived attacker, whether or not that attacker is actually causing any harm or not.
And there are always people who want to stick their oar in, regardless of whether
It is
they
true.
have
People like to
anything
hear the sound
relevant
of
to
their own
say at
voice.
all.
Yeah.
Well, as I say, opinions are like what we are sitting on. Your wife got one, y'all stink. But actually, I'm glad you brought this up because that's another thing I wanted to ask. In your case, it's clearly did not have this effect. But what do you do with either comments by people you don't know or people you know that create doubt about your imagination or about your creativity?
I've gotten plenty of those too. There's one moment that will always stick with me. I was commissioned actually by someone to draw a graphic to help promote their fandom convention. They were having a small local convention about My Little Ponies, and they wanted me to draw My Little Pony to promote their convention. And they had a My Little Pony staff person, like from the TV show, that was coming as a guest. And so when he brought my drawing to the group to kind of just say, "What do you guys think? Any feedback points?" That guy said, "This isn't style, this is just bad anatomy." And that phrase has stuck with me forever, and it created quite a lot of doubt, because when I drew it, I didn't think it was bad anatomy. And if I didn't think it was bad anatomy and it was, then what other places have I drawn this and had bad anatomy and not realized it? All of a sudden, everything I thought I knew was certain was now no longer certain, because I was told that, this very fundamental element of something that I trusted, that I had a grasp on, was being called into question. I eventually decided that I didn't care about that guy, And
So
I was
did
going to
you-
keep drawing pictures, and if I had bad anatomy, then hopefully through learning and repetition and using reference photos, I would be able to get better anatomy later. It wasn't very constructive criticism. It was mostly just criticism.
Sorry, it was a horse you were drawing. So was I mean, I know you know what a horse looks like. So
Yeah.
did you understand what he was saying?
I wondered if it was a way for him to say that I wasn't on model. Like I drew the My Little Pony as I would draw anything. You know, I wasn't trying to emulate the cartoon show look of the My Little Pony. And perhaps that was what the critique was, that he wanted me to have the head the right size and the legs the right length, and this isn't a shape that these My Little Ponies ever take, because these My Little Ponies are actually flash puppets that are pre-constructed, and he cannot turn that direction because he literally does not have a frame of animation that can let him turn to that direction. But I don't know, because I didn't talk to him directly. I heard from him in terms of a list of notes that they sent me.
Yeah, the whole legs and whatever being the wrong size or whatever. Yes, because those don't match reality. So who knows what he was judging?
Yeah, it's like I've been a fan of My Little Ponies since I was the demographic for My Little Ponies. So I've seen them take on many shapes and many heights and many degrees of looking like a horse. So
Yeah, the new ones don't look much like a horse at all.
the new ones are very cute, and the new ones were probably what they wanted to see, but I drew ones that looked
More like a horse?
more like a horse, more like a, I don't know, it was a cartoon horse. I drew it sort of something that I thought looked good, which is what I usually present people. It's like, I think this looks good, because I like the shapes I put in it, but they didn't. And but that was, you talked about a critique that inspired doubt. That was a critique that I think I'm going to remember word for word for the rest of my life, because it inspired quite a bit of doubt. And I wasn't a huge My Little Pony fan, so I didn't get it. I didn't understand it, but I thought I'd presented something that was worth my time anyway, and I had that called into question.
Well, I think we have to all go by our own interior compass. I mean, some of the great artists of the world, look at Van Gogh. I mean, his stuff is absolutely brilliant, and if you look at it, if you look at something like irises, you can look at it from a dozen different directions, and it's a different picture each time. It's amazing what he was able to accomplish, but people didn't really see it, you know?
They didn't get him.
They didn't get it. And so if that's your problem, that they're just not getting you, maybe you'll have to wait. Maybe you won't even see success in your lifetime, but hey, it may be out there for eternity.
I don't blame him for getting so depressed. Like, when you're doing your very, very best and people just don't get it, it's not that you've done it wrong, it's just that they're not following along where you've led them. I can't imagine what that felt like.
Literary versions of him, in terms of you. I can think of two right off the bat. Edgar Allan Poe, H.P. Lovecraft.
And talking about a huge doubt moment for me, I had an agent tell me that my books would never sell because vampires were out. My books were too violent and too much sex, and they would not fit into the romance category. And because of the violence, they wouldn't fit into the typical erotic category at the time. That I'll never make it. However, I'm not a bestseller, but I have sold books, and I have sold books all over the world. So,
Well, that's something too, and this is not a ding, but there's now only 5 big houses before you get to the small presses. They only have so much money they can spend. They're only going to look for the big stuff that's going to splash. They don't always know what the big stuff is, because they only know what to know.
I wonder how many times in the future it's going to be basically authors are on their own to build their fan base, and then when they can show the numbers, then a big press will take them.
Well, that's something I've said before. Strictly my opinion, and reference back several minutes ago to what I said about opinions, okay? I freely admit it, but I can't help but wonder if we are not in a new version of pulp fiction. I don't mean the movie people. I'm talking about the age period, the time period of writing. And that the independent publishers, like Lee and so forth, are in the pulp right now until they do get discovered. I don't know. But that's just, I can't help but wonder if that's the case. Okay, anyway, doubts. I know my personal one, I've got two that I have that cause doubt. One was when I was much younger than I am now, and that was from my father, who, when we were on a backpacking trip, and I was actually sitting in a hammock, handwriting a novel. If you ever see my handwriting, you know it's really only got a very short half-life to be able to translate. And he was talking to someone else, and he goes, yeah, my son thinks he's a writer.
Oh.
I'm like, and at this time, by the way, when this occurred, I should have been around 21 years old. I think I was 20. And I had written my first novel, yes, it sucked, but my first novel by hand when I was in 7th grade. Mm-hmm. That was over 300 plus pages. So, gives you an idea, yes, I was writing up until then. Then I had a beta reader who talked about, this is much later, actually about 5 years ago, who was saying that my dialogue always sound the same character. Every character sounds the same. Every character sounds the same, and so forth. And I thought I couldn't write dialogue. So guess what? I actually finally figured out a way past that. That's why I'm doing audio plays now.
Yeah.
That's nothing but dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
So if that is my problem, I'm going to conquer it. Anything else?
So we've seen many responses to criticizing topics. There's the "I'll show you." There's the challenge, taking the challenge on. There's learning to vet what is valuable commentary and what is not valuable commentary. Mm-hmm. Let's steer this back to inspiration and finding our inspiration.
Yes.
How about if we read our step number 5 on making the book of your heart the very best it can be?
Go for it.
Go for it, please.
It is set your imagination free. First thing, turn off the TV.
Yeah.
And second is disconnect from the world. So find your own world is what both of those say, really. Stories thrive on change. Characters must change. The status quo must evolve. So when you find a starting place, know it has to go somewhere. Surprises delight the reader and make a story memorable. So we need those surprises. And we talked about how to get some of those with the what ifs.
Again, I'm going to dovetail something into that statement. Last night, Melanie and I went to comedy improv, and I really was hoping Bob Baker, who ran that one, would be able to make it, but I knew he was overbooked for today. I will not do improv. That's not something which I can do. I'm too much of an introvert. But watching them, I would say that is one place to really get your creativity going and be able to be reactive to surprises, because you never know what's going to be the next line.
Mm-hmm. Because surprising and delighting yourself is the first step toward surprising and delighting other people. Mm-hmm. Make a never list and then have it happen. We talked about that a bit earlier. And finally, read. Read a lot. Read stuff you like. Read outside your comfort zone, but just read.
And you know what I'm going to say? I'm going to add one last thing to that, because I just thought of it. Don't just read outside your comfort zone. Write and create outside your comfort zone. I dance. Years ago, I couldn't do anything more than sit on the sidelines and go, okay, that's nice. And I finally got tired of it, so I'll stay in my comfort zone. Still not all that good, as you only will test it, but
Neither am I.
And with that, is there any closing thoughts? Otherwise, I'm going to close with what Fedora said.
With our advice. No, I think we're good. Everyone, keep writing and be inspired and
Find what works for you.
aim for the
As
stars.
you've seen, everyone
straight
has
on to
different
morning.
ideas.
Set your imagination free.
Okay. With that, join us next week for yet another interesting topic in the writing industry, and have a great week writing. Thank you. The new theme songs for Right Pack Radio were written and performed by Meredith Tate. All copyrights remain with her.